Today marks the official withdrawal of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso from the West African regional bloc ECOWAS. The three Sahel states announced a year ago that they were cutting ties with the bloc after their membership was suspended following military coups in the countries. The main role of ECOWAS is to promote economic integration in all fields, but the Commission also plays a role in managing peace, security, democracy, and good governance. These three nations have now formed a separate confederation called the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES, which has a strong mutual defense component amongst other aspirations.
What happens when a family no longer agrees on the rules that once bound them together? That's the question haunting West Africa today. For decades, ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, was hailed as one of Africa's strongest regional bodies. 15 countries, hundreds of millions of people united under one vision: trade integration, security cooperation, and a shared African future. But today, that vision is under siege. And the threat isn't from outside powers, it's from within. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, three landlocked nations long overshadowed by their more powerful neighbors, have turned their backs on ECOWAS. Together, they have formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a brand new bloc forged not in peace but in defiance. They've declared, "We are no longer part of ECOWAS, we will chart our own path." This isn't just a bureaucratic reshuffle, it's a rupture, a wound splitting West Africa down the middle. How did we get here? The crisis began with coups. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta seized power in 2021 after years of frustration over insecurity. In Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré rose in 2022, promising to protect his people from jihadist violence where previous leaders had failed. And in Niger, General Abdourahmane Chiani ousted the civilian government in 2023, citing corruption and foreign exploitation. These leaders came to power not through ballots but through boots on the ground. For ECOWAS, an organization that prides itself on democracy, that was unacceptable. Sanctions followed, crippling, sweeping sanctions. Borders were closed, banking systems were frozen. Trade routes that once carried lifeblood goods, grain, fuel, medicine, were shut down overnight. For the elites in capital cities, these were pressure tactics. For the ordinary market woman in Niamey, the farmer in Ouagadougou, or the taxi driver in Bamako, they were a death sentence. It didn't take long for resentment to grow. In the markets of the Sahel, whispers turned to anger. Why is ECOWAS punishing us instead of helping us? ECOWAS, protector or puppet? For decades, ECOWAS was seen as a shield against instability. Its peacekeepers helped end civil wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Its mediators calmed political storms in the Gambia and Côte d'Ivoire. But to critics, the organization became too close to France, too dependent on Western donors, too blind to the cries of its own citizens. When sanctions hit Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the accusation became unavoidable. ECOWAS was acting less like a family of Africans and more like an enforcer for foreign interests. For millions, especially the youth, this perception was damning. They began to see AES not as rebels, but as patriots. Men who had the courage to stand up against not just terrorists, but against the entire architecture of dependency that had strangled Africa for decades. The birth of the AES, a bloc of defiance. So the three leaders made it official. They would not crawl back to ECOWAS begging for forgiveness. Instead, they would create something new. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, was declared in September 2023. Its message was clear: sovereignty first, no more dictates from Abuja, Accra, or Paris. They pledged mutual defense, joint economic projects, and a new model of cooperation rooted in survival rather than foreign validation. In Ouagadougou, Niamey, and Bamako, jubilant crowds waved flags and chanted slogans. They were tired of being told what to do. They were tired of waiting for solutions from outside. Finally, they had leaders who spoke their language, not the language of diplomacy, but the language of resistance. And for ECOWAS, it was a nightmare. The clash of two Africas. This split has created a battle of narratives. ECOWAS's narrative: democracy is non-negotiable. Coups are a cancer. If Africa allows military regimes to thrive, it undermines decades of progress and returns the continent to the chaos of the 1970s and 1980s. AES's narrative: democracy means nothing if people are starving and dying. What good are elections when half your territory is under terrorist control? What good is rule of law when foreign companies loot your gold, uranium, and oil while your children go hungry? For AES, sovereignty and survival come before the ballot box. Behind the speeches and summits are real people paying the price. In Niger, a mother waits in line for hours to buy cooking oil, only to find the shelves empty. She blames ECOWAS, not her government. In Mali, a young man who once dreamed of migrating to Europe now joins a civilian defense militia because he sees no other future. He waves the AES flag proudly. In Burkina Faso, traders complain about food supplies running low, but still shout Captain Traoré's name in support, believing he is the only leader who has stood up to France. What's happening in the Sahel isn't staying in the Sahel. Guinea, also under military rule, has expressed solidarity with AES. Algeria has begun warming relations with the trio, offering trade and energy lifelines. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, whispers are growing in the north. If Niger can defy ECOWAS, why not us? This isn't just about politics. It isn't even just about Africa. The uranium in Niger powers French homes. The gold in Burkina Faso stabilizes global banks. The security of the Sahel determines whether Europe faces waves of migration or not. What happens here will shape far more than just regional headlines. Who will win? ECOWAS, with its larger economies, international recognition, and history of mediation, or AES, with its raw defiance, popular support, and willingness to forge new alliances even with controversial global players. This is ECOWAS versus Africa's new bloc, and the stakes are nothing less than the soul of Africa's future. What do you think? Is ECOWAS protecting democracy, or has it become a roadblock to African sovereignty? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next part of this unfolding story.
On Tuesday, thousands of people rallied in their capitals, chanting slogans supporting the withdrawal. But ECOWAS does not want to lose these countries and said in a statement that the three nations will continue to benefit from unrestricted travel and trading arrangements with the bloc. However, those leading the AES seem to show little desire to remain part of ECOWAS.
The AES is the renaissance of Africa, and I think that all the countries that aspire to the rebirth of Africa should join the AES.
Well, I've been speaking to Mali's former foreign minister, Kamisa Kamara. I started by asking her why these three countries decided to leave ECOWAS.
A year ago, these three nations have notified the regional body, ECOWAS, that they wanted to leave the organization immediately. I think what is unprecedented here is that we're dealing with three military coup leaders who have decided together to leave the ECOWAS and to form a new alliance called the Alliance of Sahel States. And this is quite unprecedented.
Have Alliance of Sahel States passports be introduced, and what impact would this have on freedom of movement, particularly in West Africa?
If politics lit the fire, economics is the fuel. Because at its heart, this confrontation between ECOWAS and Africa's new bloc isn't just about ideology. It's about money, survival, and control of Africa's immense wealth. When ECOWAS slammed sanctions on Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the effect was immediate and devastating. In Niger, fuel prices doubled overnight. In Burkina Faso, traders at the border saw tomatoes and onions rot in their trucks because no one was allowed to cross. In Mali, families stood in endless queues waiting for bread, salt, or a liter of cooking oil. To ECOWAS, these were tactical moves meant to starve out military juntas, but to millions of ordinary citizens, it felt like ECOWAS had declared war on its own people. The leaders of the AES bloc seized on this pain and began telling a story, a powerful narrative that resonated deeply with the public. We are punished not because we are criminals, they said, but because we refused to kneel. And for once, many in the region believed them. The trade war. No one talks about. What most people don't see is the silent trade war happening behind the headlines. ECOWAS has always relied heavily on Nigeria, the regional giant, to set its economic tone. Nigeria's oil, Ghana's cocoa, Ivory Coast's ports, and Senegal's banking networks gave ECOWAS leverage. But when Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger turned inward, they didn't collapse. Instead, they started forging new deals. Grain shipments from Russia quietly began arriving in Bamako and Ouagadougou, and Turkey started selling armored vehicles to Niamey. Gold from Mali and Burkina Faso was suddenly being refined domestically, instead of being shipped raw to Europe. And perhaps most significantly, Niger began renegotiating its uranium contracts, long dominated by French companies, hinting at cutting deals with Asian powers instead. This wasn't just survival, it was a signal. We can live without ECOWAS. Nigeria's dilemma: Nigeria, the unofficial head of ECOWAS, now finds itself in a dangerous bind. On one hand, it doesn't want to appear weak. If 3 breakaway nations succeed, what stops others from following? On the other hand, Nigeria's northern border shares culture, religion, and trade with Niger. Smugglers, herders, and farmers are ignoring the sanctions, sneaking goods across porous borders, defying ECOWAS rules with every sack of rice or barrel of fuel. It's a reminder that while governments may draw lines on maps, people live differently. For a woman selling yams in Kano or a herder moving cattle across the Sahel, ECOWAS and AES are just names. What matters is food, water, and survival. Secret trade deals and new partners. Here's where the real drama unfolds. While ECOWAS pressures the AES states with sanctions, the Sahel Alliance has been quietly opening its back door to global players. Russia, not only supplying grain and weapons, but also positioning itself for deeper mining rights in Mali and Burkina Faso. China, offering to finance infrastructure from roads to hydroelectric dams in exchange for long-term access to minerals. Turkey and Iran, stepping in with drones, rifles, and fuel contracts, filling the vacuum left by ECOWAS restrictions. Algeria, offering diplomatic and economic lifelines, strengthening north-south ties that bypass ECOWAS entirely. In effect, the AES states are weaving a new web of alliances that could permanently reduce ECOWAS's leverage. The sanctions meant to weaken them have instead pushed them into the arms of new partners, altering Africa's geopolitical map in real time. ECOWAS's weak spot: dependence on the West. And while AES is looking east, ECOWAS remains heavily tied to Western financial systems. France's CFA franc still controls the currency of most ECOWAS states. The IMF and World Bank still set conditions for loans, and Western companies still dominate the extraction of Africa's raw resources. This dependency is ECOWAS's Achilles heel, because the very accusation thrown by AES leaders that ECOWAS serves foreign masters sticks in the minds of young Africans. Millions of them watching from dusty villages or crowded cities are asking, if ECOWAS is so powerful, why are we still poor? A clash of visions. At its core, the battle is about 2 visions of Africa's future. ECOWAS's vision: a rules-based order tied to democracy, regional integration, and global legitimacy, but also one that leans heavily on Western approval. AES's vision: a sovereignty-first model, rejecting Western dictates, relying on military strength, and forging pragmatic trade deals, even if that means partnering with controversial global powers. It's the age-old tension: stability versus independence. And the people? They are caught in the middle. Traders in Ouagadougou whisper about their goods being confiscated at borders. Students in Accra wonder if their degrees will be worth less if ECOWAS fractures.
In the streets of Niamey, celebrations are loud and clear. For many here, Niger's official withdrawal from the West African trade bloc ECOWAS is seen as a moment of triumph.
It's a great day for us today to be able to come and show our joy and show that we're behind our leaders.
Many others call ECOWAS dead and say there's no hope in reviving it.
ECOWAS from today is no longer a topic for discussion. It is in the past and we will not go back.
Tensions between the 3 nations and ECOWAS have grown following military coups in Mali in 2020, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger last year, with the bloc calling on them to return to civilian rule. Leaders of the 3 Sahel nations announced their countries were pulling out of the regional trading bloc on January the 28th. They accused it of failing to support the fight against armed groups and instability in the Sahel.
The AES gamble also relies on ordinary people. In Burkina Faso, farmers and students have become armed volunteers. Some see this as courage, others as a recipe for future instability. But for now, it represents the spirit of AES, survival at all costs. The domino effect: ECOWAS fears contagion. Guinea has already expressed solidarity. Chad and even parts of northern Nigeria watch closely. If AES survives, more nations could follow, leaving ECOWAS fractured and weakened. The resource war. At the heart of this struggle is control of resources. Niger's uranium powers European homes. Mali and Burkina Faso hold vast gold reserves. Whoever secures these gains leverage not just in Africa, but globally. That's why Russia, China, France, and the US are all circling. 3 futures. Where does this lead? Analysts sketch 3 paths: collapse. AES overextends, hunger deepens, and the bloc crumbles, leaving ECOWAS to claim victory. Compromise, ECOWAS relaxes sanctions, AES keeps autonomy, and both sides save face. Breakthrough. AES holds firm, delivers results, and attracts new members, creating a sovereignty-first bloc that rivals ECOWAS. A defining moment. This is bigger than 3 nations. It's about Africa itself. For decades, outsiders dictated Africa's destiny. Today, West Africa faces a choice: return to the familiar embrace of ECOWAS, or gamble on AES's sovereignty-first model. If AES collapses, it will be remembered as a failed rebellion. If ECOWAS refuses to adapt, it may survive on paper but lose its soul. But if both evolve, Africa may finally prove it can chart its own future. Because this is more than ECOWAS versus AES. It is a battle for the kind of Africa that will exist in the 21st century. What do you think? Will ECOWAS's established order prevail, or will AES's defiance reshape the continent? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more deep analysis, and don't forget to like and share this video.